Morning. Just thought I'd do a little Christian message here and carry on with what I was talking about yesterday and make this the primary focus of what I do here on Facebook. And so today I'm just going to talk a little bit about what I call a Christian typology. And so in the book of Revelation, there's 7 churches that are spoken to, and every single one of those churches brings offense to Jesus. Every single one, he lists an offense. But 6 out of the 7 church types, they're bringing a great offense to Jesus. And he distinguishes clearly between those things. And so I'd just like Christians, first of all, to really think about that and understand is that, at the time of Paul's ministry, there were different churches. And guess what? Almost none of them agreed with each other. They had infighting, they had outfighting. In the second epistle of John, it's only one chapter, chapter 1, verse 10, 11, he's making a reference specifically to people who are going to come to his body of believers. And they're carrying a doctrine of Jesus, but it's not the real doctrine. And he says that wishing those people Godspeed, is actually being complicit with evil. And I agree with that. As Christians, we want to love everybody, and we do. That's obvious. But some of the people that we need to look the most strictly at are other Christians. Because Jesus gives us a command that people kind of tend to look over and twist up. And he says, don't take the Lord's name in vain. And what the pulpit and Satan has done to twist that verse up is they've made it about some silly little thing like swearing, like saying naughty words. That couldn't be any further from the truth of that little statement. What he's actually saying is, don't take the Lord's name in vain, which is to say, don't make it a joke. Don't make it insincere. It's a heavy thing to take the name of the Lord, to call yourself a Christian. And if you do it lightly, if you do it casually, that's not right. That's taking the Lord's name in vain. You want the benefit, you want to reap the reward of what Christ has to offer, but you don't want to suffer for it. You don't want to work. You don't want to show your patience in the Lord for it. You want to basically do what everybody else does in the world. You want to justify yourself. You want to go to church and listen to some guy tell you things on Sunday that make you feel good, but it hasn't changed a dang thing in your life. Every day you wake up and you consume the same things that everybody else consumes. You take part in the same things. And then you pat yourself on the back and you justify yourself. You judge yourself. I go to church every Sunday. I love the Lord. Now, maybe the Lord loves you for going to church, and I think he probably does. I won't claim to speak for him or know exactly what he thinks. But I do know what he says through his word. And it's far more than showing up in a pew on a Sunday morning. It's devoting your life to the service of other people. And how can you serve other people, namely the non-believer, if you're constantly putting them down, never being around them, and speaking some watered down version of Christianity that's been rejected by the masses now? That's not truth. The reason that denominational worship has been largely rejected in our society and around the world is because it's not true. It's a bunch of baloney made up by people with big egos who want to take ownership over Jesus' words, who want to claim the truth for themselves. It's nobody's. The Lord will reveal his truth to who he will reveal it to. And Paul references this specifically, that the Bible is written as a stumbling block, and some people might find that hard to swallow, believer and non-believer alike. But it's true. God's not looking for everybody or just anybody. He gave everyone the opportunity to find salvation, and that's the gift of grace, the opportunity, not the salvation. You got to work for that. It's not free. And that's why James says clearly that faith without works is dead. And those works are referenced specifically in the book of Revelation when Jesus mentions those 7 types of churches. And those who have shown the most works and the most patience, they bring the Lord the least offense. And those who have just basically showed up, they bring the Lord the most offense. So Jesus also says clearly that the way is narrow. It's not wide. Well, we know there's a lot of Christians around this world. Well, people that call themselves Christians. There's a whole lot of them. But the way is narrow. It's not wide. So I want to call to the believer and the non-believer alike. Quit listening to what some guy told you. Jesus said, those who seek will find. If you seek the Lord in spirit and in truth, with integrity, that means you get your nose in the Bible and you start asking the Lord to reveal his truth to you, well, he will. And then all of a sudden something amazing is going to happen. You're going to find yourself being able to love people that you were actually hating, that you were actually judging their sins above your sins. See, because we're all sinners, and some of us are better than others. Let's not forget about that. Just because we're all sinners doesn't mean we're all in the exact same position. We are all sinful, but Jesus recognizes the patience and the works of some of the sinful, because at least they're trying. They're not just listening to what some guy told them in a pew since the time they were 6 and couldn't understand it. They're actually seeking the Lord on their own, trying to see his face, because they're broken. Because Jesus says clearly he didn't come to save the righteous. He came to mend up the brokenhearted. So for those of you who find yourself in pews and call yourself righteous and think that you're without sin now, it's not so. Some of the most unrighteous are in the pews. The real Christians have a hard time going to those churches because it's inauthentic. We've had our lives shaken by the Lord because we've been reborn. Some of us have seen supernatural things. And that kind of thing will shake you to your core, and it'll make you a real changed person. It'll make you someone really different. So I'm calling to everyone, but specifically to Christians. If you still have a broken heart and you're going through the motions and lying to yourself and pretending that you have the peace that Jesus promises, just go after the Lord. Get out of that church. I know it'll be hard because you're connected to your social group there. But that social group doesn't mean anything. Jesus was preaching one time. He was surrounded by the masses. His own mother and brothers came to the edge of those masses and the throng of people, and they wanted to get to Jesus. And he actually prevented them from getting there. And he looked away from them. And he said, to the body of people at his foot who were actual believers. This is my family. He literally rejected his own mother and brothers at that time publicly, because at that time they weren't believing in him. That's why he moved away from them and didn't do any miracles in his hometown, because a prophet has no honor in his own home. His own mother, hard to believe because Mary's been so exalted by the fake Catholic Church, elevated to saint worship, but his own mother and his own brothers, including the writer of one of the epistles, did not even believe that he was who he said he was. Because, like a lot of modern Christians, they had only heard about the Lord. But the people that were sitting at his feet, they saw the Lord for the first time. Because if you've been with Jesus, you've been with the Father, and they recognize that. They recognize the authority of it. So what I'm calling on a lot of Christians to do is stop submitting to man's authority and start submitting to God's authority. Stop showing up on a Sunday and listening to 3 sentences out of the Bible and thinking you've been blessed. Seek it on your own. I'm not saying don't go to church, but if you're in there right now, you're going to have a hard time not being deceived. The vast majority of Christians these days are getting tied into a nationalistic perspective where they want to establish an earthly kingdom of Jesus. They're literally ready to kill other people for Jesus. We don't kill for Jesus. Jesus exampled what we do in the face of evil. We allow ourselves to be killed. If we have to die for an ideological stand of righteousness saying, enough, we will not fight wars for these sick perverts anymore. And that's what we have to do. I know that's a tough thing to swallow because our personal comfort is hard to give up. And in America, we worship our comfort. We have more substance in abundance than just about anywhere else in the world. And people constantly cry poverty and act like they don't have the things they want. It's because they're all a bunch of spoiled babies, filled with abundance and poisoned by it. So much so that they're willing to go ahead and get behind bombing children and killing innocent people who are not going to launch a nuclear weapon at you to save your own dang security. The same thing about this securing the border. It's all the same thing. They want you to worship your personal security. It's evil. Any man with a family, you call yourself a Christian. You live here in America. Well, you were lucky to be born here, weren't you? What if it just so happened that you were born in Central America and you were living in the worst possible conditions you could imagine? Your children were at risk. The sanctity of your wife was at risk. There was danger at the door constantly, and you struggled to eat. What man wouldn't come to America seeking a better life? What man with integrity wouldn't do everything he possibly could to support his family, including walking his butt to America and hopping over the border to try to make a life better than what he has? But every single American here who's got so much, they want to get behind a government system that seeks to exclude people while you enjoy abundance. Does that sound like what Jesus would do? Jesus starved practically all the time. He literally was walking with his disciples one day, and they hadn't eaten in a couple of days. And they were hungry. And Jesus just basically laughed it off. He said, I got the food of the Father in me. the food of the Spirit. There's no hunger in your belly that will ever justify shutting someone else out. It just doesn't work that way. Jesus changed the world for some people, but not the world for the world. We're to separate ourselves from the world, not try to bend it to our Christian will. We know that doesn't happen. Clearly, if you read the Bible, people don't get it right. It ends in chaos and disaster, which requires Jesus to come back. How can we kill people trying to establish an earthly kingdom if Jesus already told us it won't happen? That's why he had to do what he did. It's why he died and suffered on the cross. It's why he'll come back at the end of the millennium and right all wrong. Because we can't get it right. So every single one of you Christian, pew-loving people, this time is getting short. You get yourself out of that pew. You start hanging out with the people who need a true message of God in their life. People who need to see a real Christian. Someone who will meet them where they're at, not judge them for their sinful behavior that you're a part of too, but someone who will share the true peace and restorative message of Jesus. The possibilities are out there. God wants you to be profitable. Are you a slothful servant in your pew preaching to those who already believe? Get out of that pew. Start preaching the real gospel to people who don't believe it. That's called righteous indignation. It ought to get you angry. There is nobody that can get me more angry than a Christian. There's almost no sinner that let me rephrase that. There's almost no non-believing sinner that could ever ruffle my feathers. What's the point? And Jesus was the same way. The only people that Jesus brought a railing accusation towards were the people who ran the temples. The religious, hypocritical establishment that sought to make earthly kingdoms and extort people. That time is over. And it's rapidly coming to a close. Every Christian in a pew right now, the time is near. It's time to wake up. I'm going to finish this with a little message about prayer. One of the things that offends me the most about Christians is prayer. Jesus, he specifically talked about prayer. He gave us specific instructions for it. He said you do it in private. You go in your secret place, your prayer closet, the place which is basically your mind. And you speak those things to the Lord in honesty and in private. Because it leaves the ego out of it. Public prayer is for the ego. Christians love to pray in public. And Jesus, guess what? In his day, he brought one of the major railing accusations against those people. The people that loved to pray in front of the temples, these long, dramatic, fancy prayers that made people's heart feel so good. It's fake. It's inauthentic. And it serves the ego. Real Christians pray out of despair and out of thanks to themselves, to the Lord. And that's how real change is brought to the world, through yourself. You got to get yourself right before you could get anybody else right. And almost none of us have ourselves really right. So I'll say it one more time. There's nothing wrong with being in a pew if you're there to speak the truth to people who don't hear it. But if you want to help somebody, if you want to speak to someone who's lost, who has a broken heart, who doesn't account themselves as righteous already, if you want to speak to that person, get out of the church. Get your nose in a Bible, learn the real truth, and start spreading it around. Right now.